Hi Libra. This is going to be one of those times where, you kind of like really have to trust yourself. When Justice card comes out for Libra, it only means that you're coming into your own, you're coming in your own zone. So let's see what happens when we go from this like broken heart to the sun and we're waiting for. It's a lovely reading, Libra, so let's start. Hi Libra, and welcome to your June monthly. This is a general reading, so some bits and pieces can apply to you, and this is why I always advise kind of like go and look at your ascendant as well, and also your moon sign, because moon connects with our emotions. So hence I think most of us really kind of like really want to get both spiritual guidance and also emotional kind of like forecast. And if you're cross-watching for someone, also make sure that beside this, you also check their Mars sign, because that tells you really if the attitude is going to guide them toward you. So as you have seen, as I was shuffling, the card kind of jumped out, and voila, this is your card. It's Justice card. It is one of my basically karma cards. And, this is kind of like the card that always talks about, and whenever I see it, I have to ask, hey, what's out of balance, right? Because you guys are really never in balance. That's why you're Libra, and you're always kind of trying to make things come into this equilibrium, right? This card is really emphasizing the benefits of being not judgmental in one's attitude, right? And helps those who are inclined to be possibly overcritical. And this is going to kind of manifest a more evenly balanced attitude in between, right? So the energy of this card combines severity with beauty to kind of put that needed balance in our lives. So whether this is in this lifetime or next, this is why I'm calling this a karma card. We must be held accountable for and, face our past actions in appropriate manner if we ever hope to evolve into the next level of awareness, right? So this is not necessarily just legal balance, even though sometimes can talk about legal processes, right? But this is more or less talking about of universal balance, right? So hence kind of like it's coming to number of karma. We kind of like need to bring all kinds of levels into balance and kind of figure out what is true and what is right. Have we wronged? Have we progressed? What needs to be addressed? It's very, very important, right? And, it kind of like also represents choices, just like the Gemini, the other air card, as well as the Star, another air card. Choices that we make. And in this particular choice that you guys are being reminded over here is to make your choices based on wisdom, planning, reflection, rationality, and weigh up options that kind of like are between you see the sword and the scales, right? You this month will realize that life is ultimately fair and just, and this is going to symbolize that we want to open the doors and bring harmony and fairness in our lives, and definitely kind of like face our own crap and kind of like even apply, let's call it the love purpose, which is like some kind of self-direction and education, and it's kind of complemented by action and by work, right? So usually this card has this like more prominent sword, and here it's just like sort of like tiny little kind of like a thing, right? And this kind of like sword is talking about is like double-headed sword of justice, right? So at the same time, you're having the tree. the grounding over here. And I really looked in this card, and usually I see this card differently. I usually see this tree, okay, so there is like something that is kind of getting the energy from the universe, right? There's also something that is really growing from the roots, right, if you wish, and kind of like getting the energy this way. So kind of like both ways. But here what is taking, it is actually releasing out, because the leaves of the trees breathe in carbon dioxide and then breathe out oxygen, which is kind of like really vital for us. But if you really think there is like this balance, it is giving and taking at the same time, right? And you know, it is kind of like really important that if you have been feeling scattered and maybe spacey, that kind of like become more present in your own body, like more grounded. Like just if you need to go outside, touch your feet on the ground, like put your back against the tree, hug the tree, right? It's kind of like something that probably you need to feel more solid, and you need to feel as having a greater integrity. And what has the greater integrity than a tree, right? Here we are really seeing you know, nature in action. So I think it's going to be really time for you to come to yourself, because after all, this is really your card. So on the bottom of this deck we have deception. Someone is wearing a false self mask. False self mask in this relationship. Funny, I never realized self mask, because sometimes I don't even read this descriptions, but I always kind of like notice that both people here are wearing masks. And most of the time when we see this card, of course it's not us ever, right? And we forget that even some small actions could actually create deception. So by not communicating, by not creating that equilibrium, which you are so reminded this month to do, that this is after all why you were born in the sign of Libra, that sometimes you are too nicey, and then because you're an air sign, you don't go down Pisces path. Pisces would be like, I mean, nice, but then they become super emotional. You are nice, and when something is just like not getting there, then you just are basically going a freak out, right? And it's not a funny scene to observe at that time, right? So I really think that at this stage, guys, it is kind of like the best to kind of like look into what you can ground, what can you do, what are you communicating that maybe can be misinterpreted, right? Maybe there are like those subtle kind of like send off of signals. You know what they say, that 85% of communication is nonverbal. So it's sometimes just the silence that sends a message, and maybe you simply were thinking about something else, or just stayed silent when you were supposed to say something. Definitely, you know, the masks, basically in Greek, I think means personality, and it's always like something that is behind it. We see what we want to see, and I think this is calling for actually scratching the surface. On the bottom of the deck here, we have the Death reversed, but we also have the Empress and the Tower. Kind of like three kind of like very strong majors, and I have to take them all in account, because this one is also your card. It's kind of like also guided with Venus, but this kind of like concerns me a little bit. It looks like this is the balance that needs to be done. Scorpio comes through really, really strongly, as well as Aries and Taurus, but it doesn't really need to apply to that. I really see that some of you are suffering over something that has happened in the past, something that maybe create turbulence in your life, something that you just like felt you're not able to land on your feet, and it was a situation where you really want at any cost to stabilize. You really need to feel beautiful, you need to surround yourself with beautiful things, you kind of like really like creative endeavors. But even though you kind of like manage to sidetrack yourself, because as an air sign you have that ability that you kind of like think yourself through it, and you kind of like pull yourself out from emotional. Sometimes this kind of like really works, especially when the impact is the highest, but sometimes it doesn't, because it keeps returning you back to something. But I'll tell you something, when I see the Tower reversed, it does tell me that maybe the impact is not going to be some sudden shock as the Tower upright is. It's actually worse. The Tower reversed means something creeped up in our life that we maybe didn't even notice. Maybe it was something that kind of like came on our radar, but it was not seemingly big, but it started to kind of create a snowball effect. So this is usually when somebody here is not able to understand that they are building the house of cards. Something just cannot be built. You know, when people blindly believe in something or in someone without realizing the basic flaws of either that person or the situation. This is usually when this kind of like shows up. And because Scorpio is like so dominant over here, it tells me that there is like something that is like really emotionally related. So let's start. Interesting though, you are really going to roll up your sleeves and work on this. Pay attention to the red flags. Chemistry. Healing family issues. This could be the one. Retreat. Express your love. Religious factors. Unrequited love. Forgiving and learning. And worth waiting for. Let's leave this deception card out here, and let's see what we have here. Queen of Wands, Ace of Wands reversed, the Magician reversed, Three of Swords, Two of Cups, King of Swords, Knight of Cups. Oh la la, Libra. Eight of Wands. The Wheel. That's another karma card here. Two already. And Ten of Pentacles. This is actually lovely, Libra, even though, I mean, let's be serious, because this I'm going to leave it out as well. That we kind of like had, actually it was the other way around. So we can see how and where this kind of like pops up. So first and foremost, I think deception also can relate to something that you have been going through lately. You really kind of like felt you met a kindred spirit, and instead of moving forward, certain things just like ended up in tears, ended up in feeling, you know, let down and devastated, and feeling being in an element that you really don't like. You know, look at this kitty being stuck in the rain and nowhere to hide, and especially with the long fur thing, it kind of like does feel, oh my gosh, like, you know, this is just beyond horrible kind of a thing, but harsher. And you really, Queen of Cups reversed and Ten of Cups reversed, you really hope for something to really go all the way, even if you didn't have somebody that you broke up with. And this sometimes, or actually quite frequently, indicates that there was somebody else that either, you know, you lost affections of someone and somebody moved on really quickly and you really feel rejected, or they kind of like brushed you off, or somebody brushed somebody off here. Maybe it was you who did that, and this whole kind of like dream just like started falling apart, right? And it kind of like left a lots of questions unanswered over here in the situation. I absolutely see really, especially the Libras that are really born close to Scorpio, I see that little kind of cusp. So let's talk about, I would say, 17, 18 of October to, let's say, 25th, 26th of October. So this probably would apply to some early Scorpios as well, given how strongly they're coming through. So it looks like that kind of little kind of part is going to be really affected. But I think you guys really decided to take kind of like a bull by its horns and kind of say, look, pay attention to the red flags, right? You need to kind of look, but you're saying, look, hey, I'm not going to stay in the spot. I do need to move forward, right? So Queen of Wands is a doer, she's a shaker, right? She kind of like does stuff. She is the person who's going to organize things. For example, if you feel like you just like broke up and you just like really want to cry all day long, which I kind of like see that for some of you that definitely happened over here, this one is saying, no, I'm not allowing myself to do that. So she's going to line up a whole bunch of stuff that at the very least, while this is happening, she's thinking about something else. For those single ones, you are starting like with new enthusiasm, dating world. And for those of you who are out there and looking, this is awesome, because Queen of Wands is like who you really want to be when you're on the prowl. You look fantastic, you kind of like are sexy, and this is like way more beautiful, way more important than being beautiful when it comes to dating. And you're just like simply almost like a cat. Wherever you rubbed off something, you're leaving your scent. And at the same time, you're not going into that blindly. You are very well aware, and the lesson here has been really harsh, right? Saying to yourself, you know what? If I just like stay down, then they win. I'm not staying down. Nobody puts baby in a corner, kind of a thing, right? So what we have here is this is coupled with chemistry. So there are like two possible streams, because this one came reversed, but there's definitely something new for some of you, or for the others it's still something from the past, but that stuff from the past has a really difficulty flourishing and has a difficulty moving forward. I kind of like really see for you would be fire and water coming through in kind of like in equal amounts. Like, I mean, there is like somebody new happening. So this can actually mean that somebody new is actually somebody old in a new body, that some lesson is still kind of continuing over here. You have another karma card. So this is the third one. So we just like need Ace of Swords, and then you have the full kind of a thing. So this is telling me, especially also you have Hermit. And Hermit is looking for, basically in this lantern, he has a star, if you can see it. And this probably would be just like awful for you Libras to be somewhere out in rags and tapping in the dirt and dark. It's like probably the worst thing that you can just imagine doing that, but you almost need to go there. This is telling me that you haven't really got out of the woods, that whether you either had somebody recently or there are still issues that are very important that they need to be addressed. This is like talking about introduction. I was talking about applying wisdom and wiseness. This is the Hermit is all about that. Hermit is like, look, you know what, you can find that path. You should just believe it in yourself and take it slow, take it easy, but get there, because you kind of like know how you want to be treated. You do know what works for you, and you also know what doesn't, right? Because this is definitely coming back to something where here they are going away, walking away from something that they maybe didn't like. But you know, one thing we cannot run away from, and this is ourselves. And I think because of that, this is telling me that there's something inside of you. Because for some of you, you still want to go to some past relationship, to something. Maybe you're checking on a partner, or the partner is checking on you. Or at the very least, maybe it's kind of really hard to move on, because the Judgment card here talks about, you know, releasing that past, releasing all this kind of like crap that happened, right? The Judgment is talking about, you know, let's kind of like put it all on the table and let's see what we have with this. And it is kind of like a cycle of karma being accomplished, so you can actually start moving forward where you do not repeat the same lesson, where you don't repeat the same thing. And that probably also has a lot to do with pay attention to the red flags, kind of like being really important in this situation. So I think you're being torn in between how to move forward. It's kind of like healing family issues, which I think you had forgiving and learning later. It could be something that it goes down, what they call it, or in psychology it's called original abuser. It doesn't have to be abuser. It could be just something that is kind of like magnified. As a child, being so small compared to our parents and tiny, everything that is happening around us appears to be big, right? And something that happened to you kind of like stopped growing for some reason, right? It could be somebody who was maybe taking advantage of you, or they kind of like pushed in a situation that kind of like made you feel very uncomfortable. I don't know what that is, Libra. That is something that kind of left a big scar on you, right? Because maybe to somebody else that didn't mean much, but to you kind of like meant a world. And it was like one of those points that you probably remember as vividly as if it happened just minutes ago. It kind of like left the imprint on who you are. And these kind of moments are sort of like formation moments, right? It could be that somebody was just telling you something like, well, you know, I know best, you know, and kind of like they were motivated with kind of like resolving the problem for themselves. And I think they didn't take you in account. And you really kind of like took notice of that. So now you have a King of Wands and you have the Sun. So this is telling me that there is not a problem for you guys attracting somebody. You had Queen of Wands upright as well. Maybe you are this also could mean that you maybe have Virgos or Geminis around you, or even a Leo, that you actually have options, big options, but that you're still dealing with sort of like releasing things. But this fellow, I have to tell you, it's very, very promising, right? King of Wands is somebody just like Queen of Wands. Maybe it's somebody who can kind of like match that level of activity. Fire means like, let's do it. Somebody who would call you, hey, let's do this, and do you want to do that? It's somebody who is like really action oriented. Like Pentacles will take you out for dinner. These guys will take you like, you know, this kind of bachelor type dates where you kind of like do something different, something where maybe, you know, mini golf, some kind of action. And it generally, these kind of events foster energy, right? An energy of a different kind. It's like not so much stability, but hey, I have fun with this person. You could actually meet, and this could be healing family issues, even though the card says parents. It could be something that is simply in a family, and that you kind of inherited that family karma over here, because the Sun card talks about families and talks about marriages, births, celebrations. And especially if you're in the Northern Hemisphere now, well, actually Southern as well, but you know, like we're actually moving into the stage where we're kind of like, there are lots of stuff that will be happening where we are going to acknowledge things such as like you know, really weddings coming around. And you guys are really a romantic soul, which is very unusual for an air sign, but that's because you're here ruled by this gorgeous Empress, right? And Empress kind of like really wants to be protective of her children. She just kind of wants to have that comfort of her home and not to account to anybody about anything, but just be aware that maybe, because I told you here, you may be even fooling yourself, because it's kind of like giving me that feeling all along that sometimes you go along with romance, and romance is important, but you're forgetting yourself in the process, right? Make sure that you speak what you need to say, right? Because it could have been even a war with somebody, but I don't really see it as a war. I just like simply see that there was like something really harsh in the past, and this can actually go all the way back. But the good news is now we are done with kind of like bad news. Let's go to the good news. The good news is like already starting here and here, that it is kind of like really need for you to release, right? We have this basically Uranus now coming to Taurus. Strange combination, right? Very, very strange combination, right? So it is kind of like a drunk with somebody who is in an AA, kind of like trying to go for a date. And so Uranus is like not liking anything that is like standard or solid, and Taurus can't stand anything that is like a weirdo kind of thing. So you can just imagine about that odd couple. And you kind of like an air sign, it's much easier for you to tolerate this Uranus prankster energy. So check my new moon, because it's actually more than new moon that is starting May 15th. And you're going in a new direction. You are, I think, clearing out some karmic debts, and that's why you have so many kind of like things. So check this out. It might be that some of you are not only start to date somebody new, and somebody new who you will start to date now might be a marriage material, guys. Really, 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 really. And is going to have this like soulmate-ish kind of thing, and it might be so much passion in here that you will probably just decide to maybe just like spend some time with each other for time being, or even maybe go on a small kind of like trip and kind of like enjoy kind of like time together. You might actually also want to come to bottom of something. Here you have the King of Cups reversed, and this fellow reversed is telling lots of nice things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. So it could maybe mean that you also just want to lose yourself in nice romantic movies and just like sort of like go through this process either of healing or simply kind of coming to some kind of conclusion. We have cups, water. So there's like definitely some kind of emotional, possibly withdrawal, maybe with someone new, and maybe even on your own, where you kind of like really want to get to the bottom of what is needed for you. When the Moon card reverses, it's better because something that has been kind of like foggy, not clear, you kind of like didn't kind of like have it. So obviously the light is going to be shed on some kind of like issues over here. So that's kind of a good news. So what is like in your imminent future over here? You have King of Swords. That will be you guys again. And this is kind of like coming back in the saddle and expressing your love. So it could be that I have here two different levels of Libras. Some of you are going through that healing process and addressing the things inside. Well, actually maybe three types. Others have to understand that something that is out of balance maybe was self-created, or even if it wasn't, that now it's the time to just like draw the line in sand and like, I mean, this is what I need to do right now. Because King of Swords is like having that candid self-talk, you know, let's talk about it. Like, I mean, it's like fortifying the Justice card. It's somebody who's going to be fair, and you're going to say, okay, maybe I haven't been fair in the situation. Again, it's kind of like accounting, being accountable for things we did, and also making others accountable for the things they did. And this is definitely very, very important. And we have like this Knave of Wands and Two of Swords. Well, it is like the love that you need is actually for you still unknown. You definitely actually want, you're very attracted to somebody who is intelligent. So as they call it, sapiosexual, I think. It's just like really where, you know, looking great is important, but it's almost like, yeah, that goes without saying, right? That somebody is like taking care of themselves. But for you, that's not enough. It's not enough sort of like, great Latin lover kind of a thing. You actually want this person to be smart, to kind of like be able to have conversation. And love for you is almost like brain making love to brain, right? and only then you kind of like feel engaged and you're willing to kind of like walk this kind of like walk and see and go into the unknown and say, okay, well, let's see where this goes. Only then you kind of like go into shall we dance kind of a thing. But when you do, you become romantic. Now you have a religious factors card here, and this is falling in your emotions and how you feel. This is not always necessarily about religion. To me, this card sometimes can also talk about marriage, and it can talk about what you really want. Maybe you're finally setting a goal and saying, look, you know, I have really this what I want to have a child, I want to have the family, and if I continue wasting my time, I will not be too old, whatever you're kind of telling yourself, right? But it almost looks like that you're going to have a target toward which you are kind of like aiming. And this is like this Knight of Chalices, which is really not you. So going back to, have you kind of like presented yourself, because you guys can present yourself as super nice and sweet. You can come across as Pisces, but you have really sharp sword mind, and these people really need to measure up. So, you know, then people just kind of like get surprised, and then they maybe just simply lash out because they're surprised when they really see who you are. Just make sure, because the religious factors talks about being possibly a little rigid, and it talks about also rules that we all have to agree. So you actually want somebody to be nice, fun to be around, also romantic. So nothing wrong about that list, but you also have to kind of like make sure that you are kind of like giving your take on this. This is also asking you to look into this, how this worked for you. Looks like you have been going in some kind of like relationships that have been, you know, very romantic, especially initially, but kind of maybe especially because you guys can do it, you ended up looking into maybe they didn't work out, or at some point in a relationship you start wondering, why is this happening? That's again we are talking about is imbalance. This is generally some kind of sacrifice. Maybe you're asking yourself, well, do I really want to sacrifice for this person? Because then it goes back here, well, do we really have the same goals? Do we really have the same things where we want to be, where we want to end up? And if not, if it doesn't measure up, you just simply erase any long-term potential in this situation. And let me stop this recycling so you don't have to be subject to this noise. Just a sec. Okay, hopefully this is better. So as I was saying, like, you're becoming almost like shrewd. Nothing wrong about it. I mean, of course, I'm an air sign. I'm telling to another air sign, like, nothing wrong about it. And we air signs are known to be kind of like harsh and sharp. And you guys are saying, look, I really want somebody with finesse. And I really think that you are really setting your mind on kind of like going into something really serious. Whether you're already with someone and kind of like trying to progress through kind of stages of every relationship, goes up and down. And, you know, sometimes giving up is not only necessary, but this is kind of like a test if you really belong in this relationship. Because if you really don't want to give anything up for this person, then you have your answers, right? What it is. There is also somebody else, I think, Libra, who kind of loves you, who maybe kind of like is sending you messages and hints, kind of like pick me, pick me, pick me, and you're kind of deflecting it. Or it could be that you also kind of like are trying to find somebody for you, and it has to be on a different level than unrequited love. Unrequited love can happen for many different reasons, whether, you know, the timing is wrong, the situation is wrong, the person is wrong, the circumstances are wrong. And there's like something to be learned from that, because I think you'll be really looking at things from many different perspectives, from yours of course, but from the eyes of many different players, not only maybe just the past partners, but also through your friends, and just to really see how you're being seen, right? Because Knight of Swords is like coming down bottom of the truth, and to see what is your truth and what kind of truth you communicate. Because the Three of Pentacles is talking, look, to move forward with anybody, you really have to be able to be a part of the teamwork. This is like, I mean, it takes two to tango. You simply can't deliver it on your own. So are you willing to do that, Libra? So I guess this goes back to kind of like, let's kind of check these kind of like grounding thing. Are you willing to put the roots with somebody? So that's kind of going to be the question of the day. So hopes and fears, we have forgiving and learning. It is about healing the past. It is about going in a new cycle of this kind of karma. It is about kind of, look, let's not forget that sometimes we are on the bottom, sometimes we are on the top. This kind of like wheel keeps spinning. And whoever you are with, you have to be able to kind of like accept them as they are, with hoping they improve, hoping they decrease things that bother you, and they increase things that are really good. And that's pretty much everything we can do. You have the Devil and you have the Eight of Swords. Well, the Devil card is talking about codependency. So I'm wondering if you have been dealing with somebody who maybe had some kind of power over you, whether it was like you really wanted that relationship and you felt it's kind of like in jeopardy, that somebody was not as committed as you are, and it kind of like rendered you stuck and fearful and not really being you. And that kind of would make sense given how much work you're doing over here. The Devil can mean like when you have a narcissist and somebody who is very giving. It's kind of like symbiotic relationship. It's all well for narcissist, and giving person likes to give, but eventually this is going to go way out of the balance, way out of the proportion, and this is absolutely not good for grounding, because everybody in this type of relationship works and acts out of character. Look at this kitty here wants to be a dog, and this one wants to be a bunny. So it is talking about being stuck in a role. Sometimes we settle ourselves with a role. I'm a provider, or I'm beautiful, or I'm this and that. And then you keep playing this role. Or sometimes others saddle you with that role and you keep playing it. Which kind of probably has happened here. That you, in the past, well, you could have been, you know, awesome hunk. You know, you could have been a beauty queen. So now you feel, oh my gosh, oh, look at this first wrinkle, or look at this, or, well, I'm not rich enough. That all of a sudden, like, you're feeling insecurity, even though, you know, your personality is still there. So it is like when something undermines us, even including us. So also kind of like to stay away from the people who did that, and realize that even though it was horrible when this was happening, because I see that kind of like reflection of this like Three of Swords that you had. This kind of talks also that could be somebody's ex that came back in the picture, or somebody was like messing up with relationship by pulling the children card. And the truth is, right, that it kind of looked like a situation where you have been stuck, but you're getting unstuck right now. You're removing your blindfold. Again, we're going back to this blindfold, which we see it here as well. And it's kind of like ability to really see things for what they are. And you are not compromising. You kind of know what you want, worth waiting for. You want everything. You just don't want merging of the two people. You want merging of everything. Your whole life, your whole family, their family. So you will be actually processing who they are, because you really want to feel as that Empress, right? You want to see who they are, and also how their family is responding to you. You kind of like want to see somebody who actually really wants to go long term. So, and anybody who doesn't measure up, you're going to simply cut off. You are, I think, really going into, okay, all or nothing. You're not anymore just kind of going through, even though for some of you, no, sorry, take it back, because these are kings and queens. So you're actually getting rid of the pages that kind of like are coming your way, but you're saying, you know, pages over here, kings over here, sort of like separating, you know, boys from men and separating girls from women. It's going to be really the key over here. All right, Libra, so let's seal this reading and pull one more card here for you as an advice for this month of June. You got 2 instead. So you got stuck in the mud reversed, and you got magic prayer. So let's see. Stuck in the mud reversed. When this card is reversed, it reminds you that you're stuck due to your obstinate desire to get what you want, when and how you want it. Perhaps it is uncomfortable to admit that the course of action you've chosen for yourself isn't right for you now. Even so, you have a choice. You can struggle in the mud and get nowhere, or take a moment to observe where you are, then step out, wash away the dirt, dry off, and find other things to do. A much better adventure awaits you. You'll know when it's time to embark upon it. So bide your time, and that's exactly what I'm seeing. You're kind of releasing stuff. And let's see, what is the magic prayer? Lovely card though. It says, speak your prayers, listen for the answers, and act in faith. When you see the magic prayer card, it's a reminder that your prayers will be answered. Spirit is always waiting to help you and to heal you when you are in need. That said, the best prayer is, thy will be done through me, thy will and not mine be done. Conscious contact with your higher power is achieved through the ritual of prayer and meditation. Speak and listen to the divine force within the field of creation. Surrender your wishes and desires to Spirit. You may not get what you want, but you will surely get what you need. Your destiny awaits you. As long as you keep in conscious contact with your higher power, be assured that you are on the right path. You guys are definitely on the right path. You are getting such amazing clarity where you need to go, and also, even more importantly, where you don't need to go. And the balance is going to be established, the equilibrium. So welcome to actually really feeling back, being in the zone. So Libra, this is a general reading. As I said, check your ascendant, check your moon sign. And to get your private reading, go to cattarot.ca, and you can check specials, and you can check everything else that they have. And until next time, I love you a lot.